Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest. Absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old-timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southernappalachianherbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs.
Hey y'all, welcome to today's show. We're going to get into a fascinating herb for the week. It's Lonicera. It's honeysuckle. Several members of this family. You're going to really want to get to know this one. It could actually fall in either category of being both medicinal herb or an edible, because honeysuckle nectar, or the flowers. Well, if you ever suck the nectar out of a honeysuckle blossom, you know why it's called honeysuckle and why you would want to make use of that nectar. Well, you can make a wonderful syrup or jelly or wine out of honeysuckle flowers. So, and there are actually varieties of honeysuckle that have berries. Honeyberries are incredible, but mostly we have around here the Japanese honeysuckle, and we're going to talk a lot about the medicinal properties of this family. You're going to want to know about Japanese honeysuckle because it's a good antiviral, but it has some other properties as well. But we'll start, actually, with our foraging plant for the week from my book, The Spring Foraging Cookbook. And it's one you're going to love. I mean, honestly, going to have to be a little careful. This is in the Apiaceae family, okay? This is wild caraway. This is the wild version of the caraway seeds you get in the grocery store, which also have medicinal properties. They're antispasmodic. They're excellent for gas and bloating and cramping and diarrhea. They're really good. Long centuries, millennia old use for chewing on caraway seeds to freshen the breath, especially when people had rotten teeth and really bad breath in the ancient world before dentistry. But the Apiaceae family is the family that includes parsley, angelica, carrots, certainly, okay? But it also includes poison hemlock and fool's parsley, as they call it. You really want to make sure you identify your Apiaceaes. Water hemlock, of course, would be in the same family. These are probably two of the most 10 poisonous plants known to man, are in the Apiaceae family. I mean, it was used to execute people in ancient Greece. Socrates was given hemlock to drink, right? So you're going to want to be really careful about your identification. This is a big reason why there are no pictures in my books. If you go out and you're just like, you've got one picture of the plant, you could very easily pick the wrong plant, especially in the Apiaceae family. It's also true of other plant families, especially depending on how mature the plant is. Wild geranium and monkshood, aconite, wolfsbane, whatever you want to call it, can look almost identical in early spring. And one is a wild edible and a great herb, astringent, good for sore throats and diarrhea and all kinds of stuff, right? eye wash. You can make a great eye wash out of wild geranium. Anything where you want to reduce swelling, it's just really good. You get the wrong one, if you got a little taste, just one little leaf of monk's hood or wolfbane, you will drop dead. Your heart will stop, slow to a point where you go into coma, and then it will stop, and you will drop dead. The same is true very much of poison hemlock and water parsnip. I mean, water hemlock, I'm sorry. Water parsnip is often mistaken for water hemlock and vice versa. The poison hemlocks have the exact same effect. They will slow the heart rate until you die. Apparently, it is not a painful death. Socrates spoke with people right up until the time he fell into a coma, and apparently it was a very humane way to execute people. That said, you you're really going to want to make sure you don't get the wrong plant. So what I'm going to say, get field guides are wonderful. Get 3 or 4 with different pictures of the same plant. That's what I always say. Preferably taken at different times of the year. That's what I really like, is to have pictures in the spring, summer, fall, etc. Right? And maybe one of those good phone apps. iNaturalist is just getting great ratings. I've used it a little. I'm old-fashioned. I've been going out in the woods with my field guides for 35. Let me see. When did I start? 32 years now, since I was in my early teens. And most plants I know by sight. Now, I don't actually need a guide. It doesn't matter. I keep 2, 3, 4, 5 field guides in my backpack. Whatever is suited to that region, especially when it comes to mushrooms. I double check everything on mushrooms. But let's go ahead and talk about wild caraway, or maybe the caraway you grew in the garden. It is the cultivated version of the same plant. And assuming you got the right one, we'll talk about the wild caraway. The leaves are actually really unknown in American cuisine. It's very good. Tender spring leaves are excellent in salads. The more mature leaves can be cooked as a pot herb. I mean, that's something people really don't think about in terms of caraway. They only think about caraway seed, but no, the leaves are actually really quite good. And some people even use the root. I've never tried that. I might. Well, yeah, I'm going to give it a shot. We'll see how it turns out. But anyway, the seeds, though, are the most sought after part of the caraway. Of course, they're not going to be here in the early spring, so you're really going to be eating more at the greens. But I love caraway seeds with potatoes and sauerkraut. I mean, it is just, man, that's good stuff. And I'll give you my favorite potato soup recipe using caraway seeds. And ingredients adjust to your needs. I usually make a big stock pot full of this around late winter, early spring. About right now, actually, believe it or not, in most of North Carolina, it got into the 90s, 90 degrees, 92 even Fahrenheit, mid-early last week. And tonight in Linville, it's going down to was it 29 or 24. So that's why we don't plant the garden early. I'm not actually in Linville right now. I'm staying with a relative in the center of the state, which is how I knew how hot it was, because it was incredibly hot for April. But yeah, there'll be a frost warning around here too. So, it is still soup weather. It's always soup weather so far as I'm concerned. I'm part French. We have soup and salad a lot. So, all right, so get about a stick of butter or 1/4 a cup of olive oil or fat of your choice. You like bacon grease, use bacon grease. If I had my druthers, as we say in the South, I'd rather have some duck fat or goose fat. That is the healthiest fat. It's the tastiest fat. But yeah, I'm just going to say butter. Butter and potatoes always go well together, right? About 3 pounds of your favorite potatoes, russets, Yukon Golds. I love Yukon Golds. Red potatoes, Irish white potatoes. Oh my word! I grew up on Irish potatoes and green beans. Those, that's my grandmother must have made that about 2 or 3 times a week. Love Irish white potatoes. We all have their unique characteristics. Get some chicken broth or stock, or any kind of broth or stock that you like. You could make this a purely vegan dish if you used olive oil and vegetable stock. I wouldn't. I think chicken broth or stock, beef stock is what I normally do. Those are some of the healthiest things that a person can eat. Much better than an all vegetable-based diet. And, all vegetable-based diets are rarely all vegetable-based diets. I mean, yeah, some vegetables, some tofu, and a ton of MSG and artificial flavorings and colorings to make fake meat. And people think they're healthy and they're actually killing themselves. But, what are you going to do? Anyway, 3 pounds of onions. Yeah, I like to use about as much onions as potatoes. You can do a mix. You can do onions, leeks, definitely. Spring onions, ramps, or you can do your wild allium foraging. Remember, if it looks like an onion, smells like an onion, it's an onion. If it looks like an onion but does not smell like an onion, do not eat it. It may kill you. It could be a deadly member of the lily family. But everybody knows the wild onions that grow on your lawn. Those are actually quite delicious, especially in the spring. Chives, certainly. And I would use chives as well as onions and garlic. I'd say a whole head of garlic. I mean, 3 pounds of onions and a whole head of garlic. Best way to deal with a head of garlic, but a lot of people don't know this. If you do, just put it on your cutting board or counter and smack it with your hand. It will break apart into all those separate cloves. Then take the flat of your knife and whack each one of those cloves, and the peeling will come right off. Then you can crush it, slice it, whatever. I'm going to probably do a fine dice on this garlic. Bunch of celery. Yeah, I like a whole bunch of celery. I love celery. And with the leaves. If your grocery store if you're not growing it yourself, and you got to go to the grocery store and they're cutting the tops off, request that they save a couple back for you with the leaves, because the leaves are actually one of the very best culinary herbs. I have no idea why they cut them off in grocery stores these days. It's really dumb, moronic beyond any explanation. I'm going to go with about a fourth to a half head of chopped cabbage. Just kind of depends on how big your cabbage is, and you can use any cabbage you like. Regular green cabbage, red cabbage is always nice. Savoy cabbage, it's all crinkly and has a nice texture, whatever. Good 2 tablespoons each of caraway seeds, and then parsley and celery tops, and chives. This is the main seasoning, the main spicing, I guess, of herbing, whatever, of the soup. The caraway seeds would be a spice, but parsley and celery tops and chives are all considered herbs. But yeah, a good 2 tablespoons each, or a handful. I don't actually measure, I just put enough to fit in my palm as about 2 tablespoons because I have big hands, right? About a quart of whole milk, or a pint each of milk and cream, or half and half. Yeah, that's okay. If you had to try to make this vegan, you could maybe do a milk substitute, but you're going to ruin the soup. Go with some whole milk, or milk and cream, half and half, whatever. Salt and pepper to taste, and yes, a pound of bacon. I put optional in the cookbook, saying this is optional. To me, it's not optional. It's not optional at all. I also say grated cheese optional. Again, not optional at all. You want some good sharp cheddar, Swiss cheese, Emmentaler, Gruyere. You want some, or Parmesan. Asiago would be delicious. Pecorino Romano. Yeah, I mean, what goes better with potatoes than cheddar cheese and bacon? I mean, think about it. Butter, cheddar cheese, bacon. You kind of get where I'm going with this. So, get a big pot. I mean, I use my stock pot, put it on medium-high, cook the bacon, remove the bacon, add butter or oil. You be careful not to burn the butter. I usually use a spoonful of oil. I add a spoonful of oil to the butter to prevent burning. and especially if I don't know the stove very well, just protecting the oil, the butter from burning with a little bit of oil is something I kind of just do automatically because, when I'm cooked in different kitchens, I haven't always known how hot and how fast the stove is going to get hot. So anyway, no worries though if you're using bacon because the bacon fat is going to temper that butter. It's going to keep it from butter burning. So yeah, definitely use some bacon. So take out the bacon, remove it to the side, throw in your onions, leeks, celery stalks, and cabbage. You can add some chopped carrots, parsnips, turnips, etc. Anything you like, really. I think root vegetables just always go well together. Cook them down in the fat, and then add the peeled and crushed garlic once the onions are translucent. Remember, we never want to burn our garlic because it becomes bitter. Add the broth, bring to a low boil, chop your potatoes. I never peel potatoes, by the way. I like the flavor of potato skins. They have the vitamins, the nutrition. I'm not fancy enough to peel potatoes. Just take off any bad spots. That's all I ever do. Just chop them into chunks, toss them in the liquid along with the caraway seeds and herbs. Boil until tender. Remove the pot from the burner. It's very important. Remove the pot from the burner, otherwise it will scorch. Mash everything up until it's smooth. You can use a stick blender or something, or a potato masher, or whatever you got. A big spoon. It really doesn't matter. Return to a low heat. Add the milk and cream, or cream, I guess, and bring to a simmer. Serve with top crumbled bacon and grated cheese. With a dark beer and some crusty bread. You cannot beat it. But I also mentioned that caraway seeds go so well in sauerkraut. Well, I've told you how to make kraut before. I've told you how to make potato soup before, but not really with wild caraway. So let's just run through this real quickly. Kraut is simply cabbage fermented with salt alone. Okay? You take your head of cabbage, chop it as fine as you like. You can leave it in big chunks, or you can do it like super thin and fine. You can grate it if you want. That's up to you. I just chop it like I would coleslaw, basically. Well, most people grate their coleslaw, so maybe that's not a good example. I just chop it fine enough that I can stick a spoon in there and get a good scoop of it, I don't have long ribbons, and I don't grate it or mince it super fine. Usually to a head of cabbage, you're going to add about 3 tablespoons of, let's see. Okay, let me give you a better example. Let me give you a better measurement. Use about 1 teaspoon of salt per pound of cabbage. So, depending on the size of your cabbage, that's generally going to be 2 to 3 teaspoons of plain non-iodized salt. You can use sea salt, you can use kosher salt, you can use pink Himalayan salt. Just don't use iodized salt because iodine can interfere with fermentation. Iodine has antimicrobial properties. So just chop up your cabbage, grate it if you want to. I don't care. Salt it, put it in a big bowl, take your hands and just mash it. Just rub that salt in until there's a brine. The salt will pull the water out of the cabbage as you bruise it, and there'll be a brine that forms. That is literally as simple as can be, right? So, this would also be the time when you would add your caraway seeds. Caraway seeds give a really unique, very Swiss or like Alpine German, Austrian flavor to kraut. I grew up with a lot of people from that region in the mountains of North Carolina that came here for various reasons. A lot of them immigrated here because it reminded them of the mountains of home. Like in the late 1800s. Well, probably mid 1800s. There were a lot of Quakers and such that came in. And then a lot of them came in the early 1900s with that big wave of German immigration. A lot of them came here during World War II, refugees and such. And then a lot of people came in here from the ski industry in the 50s through the 80s when that was really booming. So there was a huge sauerkraut industry in the mountains of North Carolina. It was the largest sauerkraut producer in the entire country. And that's all been taken over by Christmas trees. The government said, quit growing cabbage and start growing trees and dump so much chemicals on it that everybody in your family gets cancer. And, of course, we always do what the government tells us. So I grew up with homemade sauerkraut. I mean, everybody made homemade sauerkraut, whether they were German or Scots Irish. It didn't matter. That became such a part of the culture. Some put caraway seeds in it. Some did not. Some put green apple in it. Some did not. And that's fantastic. Sour apples and caraway seeds in sauerkraut is just amazing. If you do that, what I would do with the apple is dice it and put it in at the end after you've really worked the cabbage because you don't want to crush your apple. Some put onion and such in there. That was not very common, but some people did. Anyway, the bottom line is, all it is at its core is salt and cabbage. You would then pack it into anything from a crock to a jar, depending on how much you have. Make sure the brine is completely covering it and figure out some way to seal it off from air. Traditionally, people would put a weight or a plate on there to hold the cabbage under the brine. A lot of times people now, doing smaller batches, use a fermentation airlock like you would use for wine or beer. When I do a small batch, like a quart-sized jar, I just stick a rubber glove over the top and secure it in place with a rubber band. As the cabbage ferments, it gases off. The glove inflates like a balloon, and I don't have to worry about air getting to my kraut. If air gets to your kraut, it will mold and could actually be dangerous. So you do want to make sure that you keep air away from the cabbage. It's fine if air is touching the brine. It's the cabbage that will mold, rot, turn weird colors, get furry. You know, that's not good for anybody. Even though they say, the furry, well, some people say it's harmless and some people say it isn't. I don't fool around with, potential bacterial contamination. But if you want to ensure a really good fermentation, you want to get it going fast, you can actually cut your fermentation time in half and get a crisper, more lemony flavored, I guess. It's not as sharply sour. A little sweetness is still retained in the cabbage. If you add just a little, fourth cup, usually about what I do, sour kombucha or whey. That's going to get your fermentation off to a good start, and it's going to get that good bacteria in there growing so quickly that it really does protect it against a lot of the bad bacteria. Down here, at my relative's house in Pinehurst, there is so much mold and mildew that is just in this environment constantly that it destroyed my sourdough starter. I had to figure out how to keep it in the fridge because I left it on the counter. I came back, like in 24 hours, it turned black. Okay, I had some real bad experiences with ferments here until I started using sour kombucha, and I haven't had any trouble since. No brainer, no cam yeast, nothing. That sour kombucha is like a silver bullet when it comes to fermenting. So, that's it. I don't think I need to go. I got a lot more information about making sauerkraut in the Spring Foraging Cookbook, go into a lot more detail. But bottom line is kind of a no-brainer the way I just explained it to you, and within 10 days it's done. Yeah, I mean, you could eat it after like 5 days, but it's going to have the best flavor at about 10 days to 14 days maximum, and when it's good to your taste, just pop it in the fridge. It's going to slow the fermentation down. It doesn't completely stop it, but it's going to pretty much stay tasting at that level of acidity from there on. Sauerkraut, you can literally cure your cabbage this way, and it would last 500 years. I mean, that is pure food preservation. At room temperature. I mean, it does not have to go in the fridge. Our ancestors learned fermentation as a means of food preservation. Plus, it's good for your health. It's good for all that good, gut bacteria and everything. And it tastes fantastic. For breakfast this morning, I had a hot dog with homemade sauerkraut and some good stone ground brown mustard. And, I mean, yeah, I was happy. Had made some hot dogs last night. Didn't get around to eating them, and had one for breakfast. And of course, my dog was happy too. He's like, hot dogs. He comes in and just glares at me the whole time while I'm eating, like willing me to save him a bite. So I did. And he actually had a hot dog of his own as well. I mean, little fellow's 17 years old, almost completely blind and deaf, and yeah, he's going to get what he wants. He's my little buddy. Um, the other thing I wanted to mention though is you don't just have to ferment cabbage in the sauerkraut style. Any member of the brassica family. You can use wild brassicas, wild mustard. Someone sent me a picture today of wild radishes. I've never even heard of such. I think it's, radishes that got out of somebody's garden and they've just gone feral in this area of Virginia. You can absolutely make sauerkraut out of both the leaves and the roots and the stems of radishes. The stems of collard greens make a fantastic kraut. The entire turnip plant, from the root to the stems to the leaves, makes an excellent, one of the finest of krauts. Mustard stems, I usually eat the greens, but I'll save the stems, chop them up, make them just like I would chop cabbage for kraut. Anything that is in the brassica family, probably other plants as well, will work that exact same way. And kale, I don't actually like kale very much, but that's one that makes a very good kraut. I prefer collards. I'm Southern. Kale and collards are very similar. But to me, collards, especially the Morris Heading collard, has a much better flavor than. Well, I do like the purple kale, or that dinosaur kale. That's actually pretty good stuff. But most of the kale I get in a grocery store or restaurant. It's a little bland. But yeah, there's some really good heirloom. Brussels sprouts actually make one of the finest sauerkrauts. You can chop them, you can grate them, or you can actually leave them whole. You can leave them whole, and you can just take out one little pickled head of Brussels sprout. I love doing this at a time, and you just sit on a plate and cut it in half, and it's just a delightful way to. I mean, seriously, I love food. And Brussels sprouts have a strongly bitter flavor, but when they're fermented, they become very complex. Sweet, sour, bitter. There are very few things that are as good as Brussels sprouts or turnips fermented. I mean, just seriously, they're really, really, really good. So, y'all, I hope this gives you some really good ideas to use with wild caraway. Now we will get to the herb. And the herb of the week comes from my book, Weeds and Grasses in the American Southeast. As I always have to say, weeds grow everywhere. So don't just, don't get hung up on the regionality of the book. It's really just my perspective. This is when I look outside, this is what I see. So, this is, it works for my book. But these, honeysuckle is, it grows everywhere. Do not confuse it with gelsemium. Gelsemium is called yellow jessamine, not jasmine, but actually jessamine. It's the state flower of South Carolina. There's also the trumpet flower vine. There are a few that people do confuse with honeysuckle. The thing is, if you confused jessamine, gelsemium for Lonicera, honeysuckle, one little taste of it and you will be stoned out of your mind and you may die. Okay? It has a opium-like, it has a morphine-like property. I mean, it's a strong alternative to opiates, like serious, not just opium, but morphine, heroin. I mean, this stuff is strong. OxyContin, very similar action, and depending on how much you take, you may die. A very, very small amount is actually very, very powerful. So remember that. But we're not talking about jessamine today. We'll get into jessamine another day, actually. And I have discussed it many times before. I think if there was any profit to be made, the medical industry would be researching gelsemium as an alternative to opiates, at least as a way to get people off of opiates when they're addicted, because like a lot of these methadone and such that are kind of ease people off of their addiction. They have similar properties to opiates. I think gelsemium could be used in that regard and just be an incredible boon to humanity. But why would the pharmaceutical industry have any interest in a free plant that's probably growing somewhere in your yard right now? They don't. I mean, they're fine with 100,000 overdoses of fentanyl in the past 6 months or so. They'd much rather have people die and make a profit than people live and they don't make any money. So, that's my opinion of the pharmaceutical industry, and probably 75% of doctors. I'm sorry if that offends you. I really don't have respect for modern medicine, considering medical malpractice, medical abuse, actually, um, etc. It's now the leading cause of death in America. Overprescription, that falls in that category, or when they prescribe two drugs that are contraindicated and end up poisoning a patient, side effects, so-called. That's actually the leading cause of death in America. Doctors kill more people in America than cancer, than heart attacks, than people with guns that, are up to no good, people robbing or murdering, right? Car accidents. No, doctors actually kill more people in America than any other cause of death. That's why I use herbal medicine and haven't been to a doctor in at least 20, 25 years. Well, I did have an emergency one time. That was, yeah. When you have an actual emergency, you do have to go to the emergency room. They're pretty good with things like broken bones or, heart attacks even. Yeah, they're very good with that. But when it comes to the more long-term health issues, yeah, yeah. Leading cause of death in America. So let's talk about honeysuckle. There's, in my region, the most common is Lonicera japonica. That is your Japanese honeysuckle, also called Chinese honeysuckle, and a few other names, but you'll know it as honeysuckle. It's the one that grows everywhere. Make beautiful baskets out of it. The Cherokee especially are known for their gorgeous honeysuckle baskets. And those things, I mean, if you get like an egg basket that's actually hand woven from honeysuckle, someone sat there and probably put 50 to 100 hours into that, and you're going to pay accordingly. And those things are museum quality pieces that should be absolutely treasured and passed down for generations. I cannot tell you how much work actually goes into weaving a basket like that. But anyway. The others are Lonicera mackii, I think Mackii. That's armor honeysuckle or bush honeysuckle. It's more what I know it as. And then Lonicera tartarica, Tarchin honeysuckle. I've never encountered, but they say it grows in my area. I have no idea. But honeysuckle was known in ancient Greek medicine. Dioscorides wrote of it. He said, and this is probably more the bush honeysuckle because he said it grows as a little shrub. So I won't get into the description of it. But he said the seed is gathered when it is ripe and dried in the shade. A teaspoon taken in a drink for 40 days reduces swellings of the spleen, dissolves weariness, and is good for difficult breathing and hiccups. After the 6th day, it makes one urinate blood. So that doesn't sound very pleasant. I'm not sure if we want to go all the way to 6 days, but he said 40 days. Anyway, it is also birth hastening. I mean, he thought it could bring on birth. I don't know. Perhaps may actually cause uterine contraction, so it could be dangerous. As I always say, pregnant women should really not use any herbs in medicinal doses unless an expert midwife or something in herbal medicine has recommended something, and I'm not. So I just say, don't take when pregnant. A decoction taken as a drink for 37 days is said to make men unfit for generation. He considered it a type of birth control. Well, if you're urinating blood, yep, you're probably not going to be fit for much in that regard. Rubbed with oil on those who have fever fits that recur. That's more like a malarial fever, the tertian and quatern fevers. It drives away the shivering. It is okay, and then he gives different names from Egypt and Rome and different places for the same plant. Now, skip ahead to 1930s. Miss Grieve said there were about 300 species of honeysuckle in the Caprifoliaceae family, mostly growing in the northern temperate zone. We don't need to get into that, but medicinal actions and uses. A dozen or more of the 100 species of Lonicera or honeysuckle are used medicinally. The fruits generally having imidicocathartic properties. Several of these drugs have more than a local repute. It means they could be used to make you throw up or to help with constipation, essentially. So the fruit of, she didn't know this at the time, 1930s, but it's actually the fruit of Japanese honeysuckle that has those antiviral properties. So by no means is that the only use of honeysuckle. The Italian honeysuckle, she said, was used as a cutaneous and mucus tonic and a vulnerary, and the seeds as a diuretic. So good for the skin, good for the mucous membranes, wound healing, and the seeds help with excess fluid. And the English wild honeysuckle was used similarly, used as a diuretic and sudorific properties. She quotes an old herbal saying, a decoction of the flower has been celebrated as an excellent antispasmodic and recommended in asthma of the nervous kind, and elegant water may be distilled from the flowers. That's true. And they said it was good for a nervous headache. The English herbalist Gerard said that it was good for difficulty breathing, helped remove weariness, swelling of the spleen, and this is basically a decoction of the seeds, and a syrup made of the flowers, good against diseases of the lungs and spleen. It was also good for hiccups. So there's actually historic use of honeysuckle, the English honeysuckle, for hiccups, which is interesting to say the least. It's that sudorific, that antispasmodic quality. That's what we're really talking about there. She mentions that the native honeysuckle to England had expectorant and laxative properties, and the flowers have been used in the form of a syrup to treat diseases of the respiratory organs and asthma, and the leaves as a decoction in diseases of the liver and spleen. It was also considered a good ingredient in gargles. Let's see, Culpeper. I guess she's quoting Culpeper. He wrote in the 1600s. She wrote in the 1930s. So his language is quite a bit different. But he said, honeysuckles are cleansing, consuming, and digesting, and therefore no way fit for inflammations. Well, see, other herbalists say that they are rather good for skin inflammations and such. He says, take a leaf and chew it in your mouth, and you will quickly find it likelier to cause a sore mouth and throat than to cure it. And we had also heard that it was good for gargles. So, there's a little bit of disagreement between these herbalists. I think they're probably talking about two different varieties of honeysuckle. So I just wanted to include this just so you know. He said, this is actually rather interesting though. He said, it is fitting for a conserve made of the flowers to be kept in every gentlewoman's house. I know of no better cure for asthma than this. Besides, it takes away the evil of the spleen. He means swollen spleen, inflamed spleen, provokes urine, procures speedy delivery of women in travail. Again, he's saying it could bring on induced labor. That's what he's basically saying. Release cramps, convulsions, and palsies, and whatsoever griefs come from cold or obstructed perspiration. If you make use of it as an ointment, It will clear the skin of more few freckles and sunburnings. The English were very big on getting rid of freckles. I don't really get that. I like freckles. And whatever else discolors it. And then the maids will love it. So, like I said, the English were real big on getting rid of freckles. English women wanted to be pure ivory white, pale. They did not want anyone to think that they had ever set foot out in the sun, because that may mean they were of the laboring class, and who would want to be associated with people that actually work for a living. Brother Aloysius, turning to the Germanic tradition, I think he's probably a little bit more reliable than Culpeper, said the leaves of this plant are used medicinally. The infusion is diuretic, used externally, and as a gargle for inflamed tonsils and sore legs. This infusion also greatly stimulates appetite. On application of the bruised herb, skin complaints are cured. You can just bruise it and put it on like a poultice, essentially. A decoction of the flowers is very beneficial for lung catarrh or congestion. Getting more modern now, Plants for Future says, they list several. A lot of these I don't even know. One called fly honeysuckle. They said the steep branches are an effective diuretic. The decoction of the shoots is used in treatment of sores caused by syphilis, essentially. The bark is sedative, and an infusion has been given to children who cry all night. So, I don't really know what fly honeysuckle is, but that sounds pretty darn useful. Let's see. There's another one. Let's see. Lonicera moroi. The fruit is cathartic and emetic, but more interesting for me, at least, because this is what grows so commonly around here. Medicinal use of Japanese honeysuckle. The stems and flowers are alterative, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory, antispasmodic, depurative, diuretic, febrifuge. The plant is also used to reduce blood pressure. The stems are used internally in the treatment of acute rheumatoid arthritis, mumps, and hepatitis. The stems are harvested in autumn and winter and dried for later use. The stems and flowers are used together as an infusion in the treatment of upper respiratory tract infections, including pneumonia and dysentery. See, this is really important. An infusion of the flower buds is used in the treatment of a wide range of ailments, including syphilitic skin diseases and tumors, bacterial dysentery, colds, enteritis, pain, swelling, etc. Experimentally, the flower extracts have been shown to lower blood cholesterol levels and are antibacterial, antiviral, and tuberculostatic. Means it helps combat tuberculosis. So I said the fruits earlier. They're just mentioning the flowers, but in Asia, in Chinese medicine, they use the fruits. So, hey, if the flowers are, I've never actually found fruit on a Japanese honeysuckle plant. Seriously, I've never once seen the fruit that produces the seed. All I ever see is the flowers and then just the bare plant. The same is true of forsythia. I have never seen, they talk about the fruit of forsythia. I've never once found it. And I keep looking at all times of year. I don't know, maybe I just don't recognize it when I see it. But if the flowers have that same antiviral action and are good for upper respiratory inflammations and infections, honeysuckle is an absolute go-to for issues like COVID. Or bird flu. This stuff that everybody's freaked out about. Forsythia also has similar properties. In fact, they go on to say, flowers harvested early in the morning before they open and dried for later use. This plant has a similar action to Forsythia suspensa and is usually used in combination with that species to achieve a stronger action. That is true. In Chinese medicine, it's always honeysuckle and forsythia combined. Powerful antiviral, antibiotic properties, anti-inflammatory properties, and it helps the lungs. And see that, if we have another pandemic, you're going to want to have some forsythia, which is blooming right now. Run out and get it, and honeysuckle, which is just coming into flower. And he says the plant has become a serious weed in many areas of North Carolina. I mean, of North America, and yes, that's true. But it might have the potential to be utilized for proven medical purposes. Absolutely. And I'm just going to give you a couple more just short entries. Lonicera sempervirens is a variety of honeysuckle you may have heard called woodbine. Resources of Southern Fields and Forests said the plant was not used much in medicine, but a syrup of the leaves was given to asthma and in angina tonsillaris. All right, so angina is usually like the shooting, like tightness in your chest, heart pain. Tonsils, it may be a pain, the swelling of the tonsils. I'm not sure. Um, you know, that's one I haven't encountered before. But definitely good for asthma and upper respiratory, so probably be good for tonsillitis and such. The bark of the plant is styptic. That means it helps stop bleeding. Flowers diuretic, and the latter used in a decoction to calm the pain of colic following childbirth. And lastly, Peterson Field Guide to Eastern Medicinal Plants says Japanese honeysuckle. Leaves and flowers are used as a beverage tea in Japan. Now, that's got to be nice. I have never tried a tea of honeysuckle. I'm sure it'd be wonderful. Definitely have to give that a try with its antiviral properties. What better? I mean, if we have another pandemic, have a cup of honeysuckle flower tea once or twice a day. All right. Flowers tradition, unless you're pregnant. So let's always put that out there. All right. Flowers traditionally used in tea for bacterial dysentery, enteritis, laryngitis. Okay, that makes sense. That's probably what Resources the Southern Fields and Forests was referring to when they said angina tonsillaris. I'm thinking, yeah, laryngitis. That would make sense. I could be wrong, but I think that makes sense. Fevers and flu. Externally used as a wash for rheumatism, sores, tumors, especially breast cancer. Now, you know I never give any remedies for cancer. It's just too serious. But this does have historic use for breast cancer. Look into it if that interests you. Used for infected boils, scabies, swellings. Stem tea is weaker. Experimentally, flower extracts lower cholesterol and are also used as an antiviral and antibacterial. The serious weed might be managed by utilizing it for proven medical purposes. Which you love it when you find these things just repeated over and over. It's like, you know, couldn't you have sourced that quote? I mean, you actually have to act like you know everything. See, you know, I'm not a guru. I don't act like when I tell you information, I tell you from where I got that information. And if it's something I actually did discover on my own, I tell you that. But I don't act like I know everything because I don't know everything. I have a shelf full of books for a reason. Anyway, I have gone off on that before. I don't like the guru types that act like this information was just magically put in their minds and they know everything. As far as I know, there's only one herbalist that is true of which that is true, I guess I should say, and that was St. Hildegard von Bingen, who was taught herbal medicine by angels and what she called the voice of the living light. I have not had that experience, and I'm not going to claim to have had that experience. But if you want more information on her, my book, Christian History of Herbal Medicine, gets really deep into St. Hildegard, probably the greatest herbalist of all time in recorded history. You know, they say Solomon had knowledge of all plants, and I think she was given the wisdom of Solomon. I think it's just that simple. Ancient Jewish history says that Noah and his family were taught herbal medicine by the archangel Raphael. Yeah, totally stands to reason if she was taught by angels the use and the voice of the living light, as she said, the use of medicinal herbs, that she had the same information that was given to Solomon and Noah and etc. So, I mean, I'm a Catholic. I'm a Christian. I believe that. You don't have to, but I mean, her stuff is phenomenal. I mean, really phenomenal. and very little used in modern herbal medicine, which is a real shame. I'm trying my best to correct that. Um, for some reason, people like to pretend that herbal medicine comes from, every culture but a Christian Catholic Europe. And the truth is, Catholic Europe practiced herbal medicine in free hospitals for at least 1,500 years, and that's one of the main ways that they spread Christianity throughout Europe. There's more information about herbal medicine in the works of the Benedictines and even the Jesuits, but certainly St. Hildegard von Bingen, and then you go into German folk medicine with Father Nape and Father Kunzel and Brother Aloysius. You get up to Maria Trebin in the 70s and 80s, and there is more documented, really hard-tested empirical evidence, just solid-based herbal medicine in the Catholic tradition from the earliest times to the present than there really is in just about any school of herbal medicine. It is absolutely equal, if not superior, to traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurveda, and like hardly anybody's ever heard of it because, New Age woohoo types don't like to cite Father Nape or Father Kunzel. They want to tell you that the Catholic Church forbade the use of herbal medicine and burned witches at the stake. Yeah, actually, no, they didn't. That was really more Anglicans that burned witches at the stake. But, anyway, the Catholic Church actually did more to promote herbal medicine and to preserve the knowledge of ancient Greece than any other force on earth in history. And I am glad to be a part of continuing that legacy. If I accomplish one thing and one thing only, it will be that. And while Christian History of Herbal Medicine has definitely not been my best-selling book, in fact, a lot of people, like anti-Catholic bigots, have posted negative reviews on Amazon to try to prevent people from buying my book, and they seem to have been fairly successful. It is, I think, one of my most important works, and my a book with the herbalist Jolanta Wittub from Austria, where we did a modern translation and commentary on the herbs and weeds of Father Kunzel. Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it because I'm not one to do any kind of bragging. I mean, I don't even buy my books. I think putting my own works on the shelf would be like creating an altar to myself. So I don't own any of my books, right? I tend to avoid any kind of pride in my work, honestly. Though I take pride in doing a good job. I mean, that's not what I mean. Father Kunzel's book, we gave the world a gift that had been lost. It's one of the greatest herbals of all time. And it was pretty much lost because of World War II. No German in America or England or whatever wanted to have a book written in German in their house. They started changing their names and everything. They didn't want to be identified as German. And no American, English, Frenchman, whatever, wanted anything German at all. And really, Father Kunzel's work was pretty much lost to the world until we went back and did a new version of it. And I guess I am pretty proud of that, actually. It's not my... how would I put it? I'm very glad to have been able to do that. If that's the legacy I leave, those two books that... not my best sellers by any means, and really just bad reviews by people who are lying on Amazon have hurt sales of my Christian History of Herbal Medicine. If enough people, 4 or 5 people, just keep that book and pass it on to the next generation, I've actually accomplished something that was worthwhile. So, Y'all check those out if you haven't seen them. Remember, this is from my book, The Weeds and Grasses of the American Southeast, Medicinal Weeds and Grasses. The other is the Spring Foraging Cookbook. And yeah, I'm going to go grab out another hot dog with some sauerkraut. I made myself hungry talking about that. If I had some potatoes in the house, I'd probably be doing some potato soup too. But all I actually have is potatoes that are sprouting eyes, so I can plant them out. Really should have planted them out already, but too many things on the plate. But hey, with this cold snap, there's no hurry in the mountains of North Carolina. I just haven't been home enough in the past couple of months to deal with much of anything. But anyway, y'all, have a great week, and I will talk to you next time.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, for your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.